He has wiped out by his grace through faith in Christ your every sin, past, present, future.
Christian hedonist is somebody who says that my greatest joy, my greatest good is God. And therefore, I will pursue that joy and I will pursue that God above all else. So God's glorified and I'm satisfied.
You are now listening to the Pastor Discussions Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode number 99 of the Pastor Discussions Podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Joan. This is your weekly conversation on doctrine, faith, and the Christian life. I was just like...
99.
I know, almost to triple digits.
Almost to triple digits. What if we made it to quadruple digits?
That would be pretty
That
impressive.
would be impressive. Like, it's not impressive to do 100 episodes. It's impressive to do 1,000 episodes.
It's impressive in its own way to do 100 episodes.
Yeah, baby steps.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't expect this to go past 50 episodes when we started. So, after the first one, we didn't expect it to go past 4.
That's true.
The first one was really bad.
I don't even remember.
Oh my gosh. It's just like everything, man.
Yeah.
It's you start out and you're terrible at it and then
I
you
just
grow
remember we're like, okay, what are we going to talk about? Okay, let's try to be as perfect as possible.
Yeah, how do we do this? Remember editing? Oh my gosh. We probably spent an hour editing out the stupidity because we would stop and then go back and restate something. I'm glad we're just either our commitment to excellence has gone down or our skill has gone up. I'm not sure which.
I just think we have a better view of what excellence is now.
That's a good way to put it.
In this format.
In this format. That's a good way to put it. I like that.
It's right in our name. It's a discussion.
It's the discussion podcast.
It's not like this edited, perfectly put together conversation that has no bunny trails. It wouldn't be us if it
wouldn't
like
be
that.
us. It's like reading Paul. It'll just sort of like rabbit trail off for a paragraph and a half in one run-on sentence and then come back. Or 3 chapters. Yeah, exactly. All right. So we're part of the Bar Podcast Network. You can find out more about them and get great biblical content for your ear holes at thebarpodcast.com. And then check out the Think Podcast with Joel Sedekase. And, there was something else I was going to say. What was it? Yeah, it must not have been important. Oh, we're doing, next week, let's talk about this. Let's talk about communion because we're doing a big shift with communion.
Oh yeah.
We're going to eat it in conjunction with a meal this next month. So,
which for, maybe that's not that big of a deal for anybody else, but that's never been done here.
Yeah, that's
at least not in my 15 years being here.
It's a big deal for us. So let's talk about that next week.
Lots of communion talk.
Yeah.
Lately.
I know, right? It's good. It's a good topic to think through. I've been amazed at how beneficial that just preaching through communion once a quarter has been for me. So, yeah. All right. So let's talk, today we're going to talk about, being a welcoming church, and we're going to talk about in the context of what it maybe used to look like to be a welcoming church versus what it looks like now to be a welcoming church, which is interesting because you would think that wouldn't necessarily change. You know, when you think about welcoming, what does it mean to be welcoming? And I guess at its core, we'll maybe get to this conclusion, but I think when you get to it at its core, it doesn't, but the way that it manifests itself maybe does.
Like it's not different, but the
way that it's shown is different. So let's talk about the way that being welcoming and inviting has been shown in the past in the church.
Well,
I might not be much help in this because I didn't grow up in the church.
That's true.
So
this was a bad topic.
This might have been. You're gonna have to carry this one, buddy.
So my thought, and some things that I've seen when I was a kid is in general, there's like so you have everything super formalized.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I've seen. So if you didn't experience this, then don't hammer me for this, but this is what I've seen, generally is it's super formalized. So you've got specifically assigned people, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay.
Right, yeah.
So I'm just telling you what what I've seen. And those people are the ones that are supposed to welcome them in. And as long as the people that are coming, the new person meets the quote unquote criteria, and I'm going to say this again, caveating, this is my experience. So I'm not saying that this is how your church has done it or what you experienced or anything, but when I was growing up, this is what I saw. If they met the exterior criteria, so they looked the part, they acted the part, then we would welcome them. There's almost an expectation that was put on people that they would fit a certain mold. Now, I also think,
What did that look like?
well,
Like, is it like, because you said if they looked a certain way, like what did that look constitute? Was it
so like a sleek look, or was not really? So I mean,
so like they're put together?
So I wouldn't say that. So okay, the church I grew up in is a kind of a homeschool conservative church. So there was an expectation that people would dress in a certain way and up to a certain standard. So if you would have come
I gotcha.
and not been wearing those things to that standard, that would have been probably addressed with you.
Okay.
That's
Really?
that's my that's my perception. Okay? Maybe not the first time, but if that
Eventually, if
person
you kept
started
coming, there would be
like,
some pressure.
There's a conformity to this is how we dress,
Under
right?
pressure.
Yeah. So you had that, and I also think for the people that when people came, there was almost, especially when you're going to church, there was an expectation that some of that would happen too, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, there should be a welcoming community. There should be people doing this. We should dress a certain way. There's like expectations that new people had of feeling welcome.
Okay.
So I think those are kind of the two biggest things that I would see. I would see it was formalized, and there's a standard
Okay.
coming from both sides. Now, what I see is I don't think it's so formalized. I still think some formal type of welcome ministry can be helpful, but you can't put it together in a way in which there's a group of people and that group of people are the welcomers and then nobody
That's
else
their
is welcome.
responsibility.
And everybody else is all of a sudden off the hook.
Yeah.
Because because now people who come into the church do not have any of those. I don't think those standards or expectations anymore. At least in the younger group, they want to come, they want to check things out, they want to feel welcome.
Yeah.
But they don't want to have this overbearing feeling of that one group and then get the cold shoulder by everybody else.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I think, what people are seeing when they come in to the churches, because we have some of these welcomer ministries. Well, nobody else actually is very welcoming to.
And it's not the issue is not that you have a welcome ministry. The issue
Right.
is that the people think that they're the only welcomers.
Right. And I think a welcome ministry is actually extremely helpful in like integration into the church. But I think what has tended to happen, and this is what I've seen happen in especially bigger churches and even medium-sized churches, and I'm sure there's small churches in there too, but is all of the welcoming atmosphere of the church is put on those few people who are in the welcome ministry.
Yeah.
And then everybody else can have this attitude of, it's not my responsibility.
Yeah.
Or a lot of times that can be put on the pastors too. It's the pastor's responsibility to make sure that every newcomer that comes to the door feels welcome. And then, by the way, they have to get to everybody else too.
Yeah.
And make that sure they feel welcome as well. Anyway.
Side note.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest difference. So I think the biggest thing that's changed, kind of going to your point that at the core, I don't think anything's changed in what we should be doing. The biggest thing that I think has changed from 20 years ago to now is the people that are coming in to the church and their expectations and what they're there for.
Let me ask you this. When you were a kid, did they have like a greeting time in the service?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
stand up, shake, go greet, or
Go greet your neighbor.
Yeah.
Shake your hands with your neighbor like a little 5-minute.
I'd stand there
hiatus.
and wait for.
Yeah, like that's weird to me. That's really strange.
There's still
to
a
me.
lot of places still do that, and there's people that really like.
And
it.
I look at this differently because I came into the church. I didn't grow up in it. I think if you grow up in it, you kind of have some. It's normal. Like, you know, you have these things that are normal that you've grown up with, that you've become accustomed to, and that have been sort of like woven into the fabric of your church experience. But then if you come from the outside, there's certain things that you see that just are like silly to you.
But why is that silly?
It's silly because, like, if in an effort to make somebody feel more comfortable, it actually backfires and makes them feel awkward. So what you've essentially done is you've essentially said, everybody turn and greet your neighbor. Now there's two possibilities here. The first one is that all sorts of strange people are going to bombard you and come up and greet you, and you're going to have this group of people around you that's just awkward and strange and weird. And really, you don't, like, I don't know. I wouldn't want that as a new attender. I would want to meet some people. Yeah, sure. But I wouldn't want to feel like the spotlight was all of a sudden on you. And it's like, I've seen this. I've heard of this. I haven't seen it, but I've heard of this. Like, if somebody new is in Sunday school, you ask them to stand up and introduce themselves. Like, no, just stop that. That's bad. But the other possibility is, here I am, this new person, and everybody starts greeting people that they know around them. And I have no idea who anybody is. And especially if I'm like an introvert, I just sort of stand there awkwardly and I'm not sure what to do. And then nobody greets me, or I don't go up to anybody because I'm not that outgoing person. And then you're just like, well, I guess I don't belong here. That's kind of weird. So I think that there's some of these things that we even think are helpful. We don't really think through from the perspective of somebody that maybe didn't even grow up in the church or didn't come in from.
Okay, I think the intention and what that accomplished at a period in time was good.
Yeah.
Okay, but what is happening now is you're actually, because for whatever reason, the generation that we're in, it's one of its biggest values is seeing authenticity in people. Yeah. It is like, if you're not real, then I don't want to be around you.
Yeah, you don't shake my hand to check a box.
Right. And so whether this is true or not, their perception of what's going on is that you're just doing this because you have to. This is an inauthentic thing. And I think it immediately turns off those new people coming in to church now. I think people need to be cautious in using it. I'm not saying that you can't and that it's not a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing either. It's like it's
one of those neutral things.
Yeah, it's like, but are you actually looking at the people that are coming in and saying, okay, is this going to help somebody plug in, or is this actually going to push people away?
Yeah,
I think we need to be running some of these kind of normal hospitality type of things that we just think every church does. It's just a thing to do.
Right.
Okay. Why are you doing it?
Yeah.
And is it overall beneficial?
Yeah.
Cause I think this is my opinion. Cause I'm same way. I hate those times.
Yeah.
I stand there and just kind of hope no one actually comes over to where I'm at.
I'm going to use this time for prayer and meditation, primarily praying that God will keep everybody away from me.
So let me push back on that a little bit. So what would you tell somebody who says, well, how else are we going to get people to engage with other people then? Yeah. One of the reasons I think churches use it is they're trying to give people an opportunity in a safe way to go and say hello and meet someone new, right?
Yeah. So like, I think that's a legitimate pushback. And the question that I would have is, why do people need this forced time to do that? Like, that, to me, that indicates that there's an issue in the church throughout the membership where, again, it can be perception, but maybe it's like, oh, we're doing this because we're supposed to, it's our time to do it, versus, hey, excuse me, hey, there's somebody new. I genuinely want to talk to them. So for me, as somebody that's new, it would mean a lot more to me if I sat down and the person sitting next to me, or the person sitting in front of me, or this person sitting behind me just turned around and said, hey, I haven't met you before. My name's John. What's your name? Are you new around here? And just ask a couple questions and get to know you, like before the service, or, you know, a lot of visitors come like as the songs are going for the first part of the worship service. And so like even after the service, I mean, I've seen Carly does a really good job of this. We'll be singing and she'll lean over and she'll be like, hey, have you seen that couple here before? And I'll say, no, I haven't. And then after the service, I'll see her grab the kids and walk over and intentionally talk to that person. So to me, that I don't think that that you need, ideally, maybe this is an idealistic thing, but I think that this is such a responsibility of every person in the church, that in a healthy church environment, I think that should be happening organically as people open their eyes and look around and start to notice people around them and have that spirit of hospitality and love that desires to go and talk to them.
So agreed, but how do you get, so let's say you're trying to go from one of those, which is maybe outdated and just unhelpful now, to a more helpful way and a more authentic way of doing it. How do you get from one to the other? Because you can't just shift from, I don't think, one that where you have an environment where people are used to having this, this, I don't want to call it a crutch, but they have this thing to lean on, to be able to help them go and do that. And now you're just take that away and say, go do it on your own. Yeah. Like that's dangerous, because what you could wind up happening is just nobody does anything.
Pulling a rug out from under their feet.
Right. And then you've got nothing. So, I mean, we're talking about ideally.
Right. But we don't live in an idealistic world.
Realistically, I would say the majority of churches I go to have that greeting time, right? Even some big churches I've gone to have that.
Really?
Hey, while they're doing a transition on stage, they'll do the meet and greet thing.
Yeah. I think that's a great question, because as a pastor, I think the first thing you got to do is you got to assess, is this actually meeting the purpose that it intended to meet? So if you have, let's say you have this greeting time and you
like
start.
This. I should just like interview you.
I don't know how this got turned around. That's not at the beginning. Joe's going to carry this one, and then you start turning it around on me. You're like a conversational ninja. So like looking out and watching during that greeting time and seeing what happens. And if you see a helpful number of people that are actually engaging with other people, because let me back up. We tend to sit in the same spot every time on Sunday, right? So in theory, this greeting time can be just like sitting by your friends and greeting your friends and talking to your friends.
It can be.
It can be. So I think assessing where the strengths and weaknesses are is the first step. Like, is it actually accomplishing the goal that you have for it? If somebody new comes in, are they actually getting greeted? And just sitting back and watching and assessing. And then I think that maybe the next step would be to encourage people in some, maybe you have to extend the time a little bit even, and be like, hey, I want you to just take a second, get out of your row and go talk to somebody that you haven't seen in a while, or go talk to somebody that you don't know, or, just something like that, where you could incrementally start to move it toward a more helpful direction and start using it to actually train people to do the thing that we should be doing on our own. And then ideally you get to a point where, as you see that starting to happen, even outside of the worship service, that you're able to make that adjustment, and maybe you go down to, once every other week or once a month or something like that. Or you move the greeting time to the beginning of the service, so it's not in the middle of the service where it's interrupted. So I think there's a lot of options for pastors that want to move in that direction. And I agree with you. You shouldn't just like wholesale shut it down, because that's not helpful for anybody. But if it, I think the first point is assessing, is it actually, and maybe even talk to some people that visit and get their perspective on that time and what they thought about it. You might live in a community where that's like valued, where people that visit are like, yeah, that was really helpful. Well, in that case, then, don't listen to me. I think that that's something that could be a helpful thing at that point. So yeah, I think that there's some wisdom that goes into that and in all of that. But
so one of the things I was thinking about too, as this conversation has been going on, there's a big difference in the way that we relate to one another now, from say 2 generations before us to the Xers, and now into to us, or the Ys,
millennials, Ys, Zs,
whatever it is. So we're millennials, and the generation before us was kind of this. They can do both.
Yeah, they can swing either way.
Yeah, and then you got the boomers.
They understand both.
Right, and the boomers before us. So the boomers, and is that X, the generation?
Yeah, there's the greatest generation, boomers, and then X, and then millennials, and then Z. And then is after us.
And then whatever.
And then I don't know what,
just started.
They haven't figured that out yet.
Okay, so those 2 generations that are before us, I think we've talked a lot about this. You and I have, about you would go to something to find belonging, right? Yeah. To find community. So one of the things that happened, and one of the reasons I think some of the welcome ministries used to be so effective, is because when people were coming in, they were looking to find a spot to plug in. They were now. People are coming to find others who they can connect with. They're not looking for this big, broad community.
Yeah.
I don't think. I think they're coming. They're looking for a lot of people I've talked to are looking for high exegetical or at least scripture based preaching. Like they don't want any of the fluffy stuff. So that kind of becomes a priority to them. And then they're looking for authentic people.
Yeah.
So I think there's a difference in what is prioritized now, in the generation shift when new people come in. And so when you do some of those things that were based on being welcoming to those 2 generations before the millennial generation, I just don't think they're as effective, and they actually can be repulsive in some ways, especially if the people that are doing them aren't very aware of it.
Yeah.
The ones that are executing the ministry. I think that shift in the way that people relate and what they're looking for when they come in the doors, I think it affects this conversation greatly as well.
I agree. The paradigm is that you used to attend to belong, and now you belong to attend.
Yeah.
So there's been this massive paradigm shift, which also has implications for hospitality as well. So if you have, let's say you have a friend that you've been sharing the gospel with, that you've been inviting over, that's become a part of your circle, and they show up at your church. You then have an opportunity to introduce them to somebody else that you know, and there's an automatic point of connection. They're more receptive to that. They're more willing to. So if I have a friend that we just use our neighbor across the street, Cully and Lita. When they came to church for the first time, I saw them walk in and I was floored, because Lita had told me she would never go to a Baptist church ever, and I was floored when they walked in. And so I didn't say, "Oh man, I hope somebody greeted them at the door." I went up to them because I was the one that knew them.
Yeah.
And then I introduced them to somebody else, so that, like, hey, this is my friend so-and-so. Hey, these are the Silas, they're our neighbors. And they had a conversation. And Cully and Lita ended up getting baptized and becoming members of the church and having connections with people in the church and having relationships with people in the church. And I think that personal relationship piece plays a big role in that. So this not only impacts how we do hospitality and stuff, this impacts evangelism and this impacts all of it. But that is a very solid point, because in the past it was built around the organization and belonging to the organization, where now it's built around the organism and belonging to the organism. And that's a huge shift, which I think is, so I'm in this I say this every week almost, I feel like, but I'm in this revitalization cohort, and all these guys are struggling with the same thing. Like Sunday school attendance is down.
Yeah.
Wednesday night attendance is down. People are not coming to extra things.
Right.
And yet there are consistent people that show up on Sunday mornings that don't show up to this other stuff. And I think that can be explained by that paradigm.
Me too. And we have to be willing to look at the ministry, the way we're going to build our formal ministries, that we have to take that into account.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're going to come off as unwelcoming and fake to a lot of the new people that are going to come in to the church. So it shouldn't be that way. And I think you should be able to build just about any one of those. So take the formal ministry model. So let's take the one we've been picking on with the welcoming thing. I think that can be attractive across all generations if it is done with the people's intention doing it is, I really care about the other people in here. And
lest there be some that are not millennials and younger that are listening to this, let me just throw this out there. Like, we're experts at sniffing that out.
Absolutely.
That authenticity thing. Like, there is no faster way to get somebody to not only not trust you, but not come back than to be doing something out of duty rather than authentic care.
Right. So that welcoming time could be really beneficial. This is where you, as somebody, whether you're in the welcome ministry or you're in the church or you're the leader or the pastor, whatever it is, you've got to use some discernment and some wisdom. Is like, are our people at a point where they really care about everybody else that's in here?
Yeah.
Because if they do, then I think you can throw about whatever structure you want to throw in there,
right?
And it's going to be successful because you have people that genuinely care.
Absolutely.
I would venture to say that most of us are not in that spot where we feel like everyone's going to be doing a good job of that. So I think we need to be wise and careful in the ministries that we do structure and we do build when it comes to hospitality and welcoming, that they fit the church and the people that we have in a way that's going to help us grow in that.
Yeah.
But it's also not going to push people away at the same time. Like, we just went through a massive shift over the last 2 years in how we're trying to accomplish hospitality, because our church has a reputation of kind of not being very welcoming and being cliquey and being kind of inset, and just like, we like our people. And
we like doing things our way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's been lots of conversations and lots of thoughts and lots of planning on where do we find a spot where we're welcoming to people and we're teaching those who are maybe a little more unwilling to step out and maybe they're just not there and caring for their brother and sister yet, but help them grow in that too.
Yeah.
Like, part of the ministry plan has to be, how do we grow in this together so that we get to that point where we don't need a welcoming ministry because everyone is actually caring and hospitable towards one another. They care that people are there.
Yeah. There's an interesting reason that this is important and significant. I was reading this thing on the next generation, Generation Z, and essentially it's an unchurched generation. So my generation started going to church occasionally, or my generation was not going to church at all. My parents' generation was like showing up, going to church occasionally, and the generation before that was like regular every Sunday attenders. And what's happened is, like, my kids and their friends, your kids and their friends are in as a whole and they know nothing about the Bible. It's not even like their parents opened them. There are kids that don't know who Jesus is. There are kids that have never opened a Bible in their entire life, never shown up to church. So if the church is going to be reaching this next generation and the generation after that and have a consistent witness of the gospel, then there is a degree of contextualization that has to happen in order for that to take place. So contextualization is not a bad word. Over contextualization is. But if you're preserving the integrity and fidelity of scripture and the message and presenting it in a way that's relevant to that, people don't like that word, but that's received by that culture, then that's contextualization. I mean, Paul did it, Peter did it, Jesus did it, everybody does it. We do it by speaking English and reading English translations. So it's not bad. It's just we need to think through this. So
I think one of the reasons people struggle with it so much is because there's a feeling that when you do that, you're attacking the way that it was done before as if it was something that was bad. And that's not
the case.
Anything close to the truth.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this worked for a time period because it was relatable and people understood it.
It fit the culture. It fit the context.
Yeah. You've got to be willing to say, okay, what does our culture look like now? And people who are saying, well, they should just conform back to what we were doing.
Exactly.
Okay. Maybe you feel that way, but that's just not the reality.
It's not going to happen.
So do you want to be effective? Do you want to reach people? Do you care about the next generation, the next one? Okay. If you do, then you've got to realize that there are some good things that happen, but things are going to change and shift.
Exactly.
To be able to reach these next groups of people, because good or bad, whichever side you're on, they're not the same as the generation that you maybe think is the best generation
and the best way to do it,
right?
You know,
and had the best time of ministry and
really
like.
it comes down to loving your neighbor as yourself. Like, understand that if we continue to do things the same way that we did them 20, 30, 40 years ago, as much as you love that and as meaningful as that was to you, it will not be that loved and not be that meaningful to the next generation. So shouldn't we want to provide them with that same engagement with the truth of scripture and with the gospel and with Christ that you were able to experience? That should drive us to be willing to adjust on things that are non-essentials, that are not those closed fist doctrinal things, that are not explicitly laid out in scripture. So I'm not going to stop preaching on Sunday mornings. We're not going to stop singing on Sunday mornings. But the way that we do that might change. The way that we do that might be different. And so with this next generation in particular, like, you can't just assume that they know what it is to be a Christian, or they know what Christian morals are, or they know what Christian values are, or they know what, they know anything about what it is to be a follower of Jesus Christ. The thing that they're going to see when they show up to your church is how you love one another and how you love them.
Which is what hospitality is.
Exactly.
So.
It matters in a big way for having that door open to be able to continue to influence and share the gospel with them and reach them, with the gospel. So that's the first rant. The second one is, like, maybe we'll close out with this, like, unless you have anything else after this, but what are some ways then that are, contextually appropriate? We'll just do it for our area because I don't know what everybody's context is, but what are some examples of some ways that are appropriate, that are good, that are helpful, that individual members of our church can go about doing this in a way that isn't just, hey, well, we've got our welcoming people. Like, what are some ways that individual members need to take ownership of this, or some practical things that they can do that can express that love, that can invite and welcome those people, that can, all of the stuff that we've talked about.
Well, first off, you have to actually have a real heart for those people. So
here we go with the spiritual side of stuff. I said practical, Joe. Practical.
I know, but practical starts with
practically. Really, you need to have a heart for these people.
One of the practical realities is that, for whatever reason, this generation is just looking for anything that's even a hint of fake, and they just latch onto it and just rip it apart, and then they're done with you.
Yep.
And
they don't trust institutions,
whether that's fair or not.
Yeah.
And in many cases, that's unfair, and that's a weakness of this generation. It's one of its strengths, but within that strength, there's a big weakness.
Just like with everything else.
Right. So do you really care? I think that's a question we need to ask. Do I really care about every other person, every other face that's in this building? Enough to go outside of the people that I'm comfortable talking to week in and week out, the people that I enjoy being around, to look for the one that nobody's talking to or that is new or whatever it is. So I think we need to start with the question is, do I actually care? Okay. And if you can say yes, all right, now I need to start acting on that genuine care. And that's where it becomes, we need to spend some time in prayer and asking God to give us the strength to be able to follow through on those things. As far as some practical things, I think too many people have overcomplicated it. Now,
Agreed.
I am completely and like so thankful for it's in our congregation, the people who are in our welcome ministry,
Yes.
who are at the doors week in and week out, and we just implemented a welcome center, and we've got our coffee people, and you got your ushers. Those people do a great job. They're welcoming, and I'm
it's
super.
They enjoy it.
Yeah,
like
and
you can tell.
and I'm super thankful for them. I think it is a vibrant ministry.
Yeah, we're not knocking that.
So I think it's really good, but I think people discount the simplicity, and I know you think the same thing on this, of just going up to somebody and saying, "Hey, I don't have any lunch plans. Would you like to go have lunch?"
Yeah.
Like, you would be shocked at how far that goes, and everybody is afraid to do it because there's this barrier of we don't really know one another.
Right,
what are we going to talk about when we have to sit down for an hour?
I don't know
It's
you
like-
well enough to enjoy an intimate meal with you.
Okay,
like
but-
I'm serious. Like there's an intimacy about eating around a table with somebody.
There is, but you're eating half the time.
But that's the ironic thing is that eating is actually a means to building relationship.
So I think one of the most practical ways that I have seen, because I'm not naturally good at hospitality. I kind of stick to myself. I am a head down type of person when I'm walking around. People don't generally talk to me because
You've got buzz off on your forehead.
I have an angry face. So, but one of the things that
This is why this is a podcast, not a YouTube channel.
one of the things I found so helpful is just every time we have somebody over for a meal or we go out with somebody, like, even if I don't know them, even if it's kind of awkward, there's good conversation that happens. And I think what people walk away with is, I genuinely actually care. Like, I want to be here with you. I want to get to know you. So I think that's one thing that no one is unqualified to do.
Exactly.
So start there.
Yeah.
That's the most practical thing you can do. And it's, you're inviting somebody out to eat.
Yeah.
Or you're inviting them over to your home. It's not a complicated thing. I think that's the most practical thing that I can think of. There's some other things I think.
Can I add something to the meal thing?
Sure.
Like,
no, it's mine.
Yeah, it's yours. Okay. I'm gonna improve it. No, but like when you go out to that meal, like I think that there should be an intentional focus on getting to know that other person rather than defaulting to what we all default to, which is talking about ourselves. Being able to like ask questions and get to know that person and ask follow-up questions to that person so that you're actually interested in them and getting to know them. And then also like, especially for maybe if you struggle with like if you struggle with that sort of that mentality that you were talking about at the beginning, where it's like these people need to look a certain way or need to conform a certain way, like let go of that.
Yeah.
Like don't touch that. It's not, hot button topics are typically not a good thing to talk about the first time you meet somebody.
There's a lot of barriers that we haven't covered, but like dress can be, and the way we appear can be a big thing, especially in the church, because especially from generation to generation, we can really struggle if you're a person that has a conviction, a Sunday best dressed person.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be able to see and look at some text in scripture and see that Christian freedom. Maybe you hold that conviction, and I don't want to make little of that conviction, but somebody that doesn't hold that conviction and is willing to wear shorts and a t-shirt to church, if that is the wall that you're going to build up and the barrier that's going to keep you, like, then you really don't care. Like that goes back to that point of, do I really care about the other people here?
And it's
carrying more than caring more about them than yourself.
And getting to know them versus trying to fix them. That's sort of what I'm getting at with the lunch thing.
Yeah, that's a really good.
Like you can come across as if like, hey, I invited you out to let you know what the standards of our church are.
Or there can even be an attitude, I think, sometimes, we want to keep you coming.
Yeah,
we're doing this to keep you here, and no, it's
you owe me. I took you out to Runza. You got a large combo.
You have to come back here next
2 weeks. You owe me 2 weeks.
So avoid those two things. So I want to get to know you because I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we got to worship together.
Exactly.
I want to find out who you are,
how I can minister to you versus let's get this thing ironed out so that you're here regularly and looking like you should.
That's really good. One other thing I think that's just a practical thing is, are you willing to get up and go spend 5 minutes talking to somebody you don't know or that you haven't seen in a while on a Sunday morning? So if you're a regular attender of church, I see, like, I tend to do this too. I can be kind of removed. I got my routine of things that I'm going to do. We pray 15 minutes before the service. There's a group of people that get together and just pray for the service. And I'm pretty committed to being at that, and I think that's important. But there's been 2 times in the last month where, because I've committed to this recently, I've been having conversations with people about stuff and not willing to just let, hey, I need to go get out of here, but find a good spot for that to happen where it's kind of done.
Which is really hard in the Midwest.
Yeah,
because there's all these fake endings to conversations that you got to navigate through.
So I think. Will you commit to do that? Because I see a lot of people that'll go sit in their spot.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Right after Sunday school is done, they're in there. They won't move. So if anybody's going to talk to them, it's going to be somebody else coming up and instigating the conversation and starting it with them. So I think those are probably 2 really practical things that everybody can do. Yeah. It's just, are you willing to put yourself aside and your comforts and self-centeredness or whatever it is, and have a genuine care drive you to go and do those 2 things. I think those are the 2 most practical things that I can think of.
I agree with each of those, and they're so simple, and everybody can do that. I would add, maybe these might not be practical things like you were talking about with like going up and just talking to somebody, but like, especially in our context, you got to kill tribalism. Like, you need to put that to death. There is a tribalistic attitude in small towns in the Midwest where it's us against them. It's our people. I've been in this town forever. I know all the people in this town that have been in this town forever. This is our town. And it's as an outsider, it's like, I don't know if we'll ever fully integrate into York, because no matter how long we say we weren't born here, that can creep into the church. And it's evil. It's wicked. It's sinful. And unless we're willing to kill that tribalism, we're never going to be welcoming, because we live in a much more mobile culture than we've ever lived in before. I mean, we got people that are coming here to get jobs. We got people that are coming here to go to college. We've got people that are moving here because they want to get away from the city, and they come from different cultures and different backgrounds. We've got minorities, ethnic minorities. We've got all sorts of people around here that you can be blind to if you're tribalistic, and that you cannot even see, and you can automatically write them off. So in conjunction with that, I would say that maybe one practical thing on Sunday morning is, who is the person that you would be least likely to talk to in real life? Go talk to them. Like, if you're walking down the street, if we're walking down Walmart and you see the Latino family that doesn't speak English, and in a predominantly white community, of Midwest people that have grown up here, and then you see your friend that you knew in high school that you're friends with, which one are you more likely to go up to and talk to? In church, find the person that you're least likely to go and talk to.
That's a good rule. Just
go
general.
Strike up a conversation. You would be amazed at how that breaks down tribalism, because we find out that our tribe is really the tribe of the Lamb, and we are part of a redeemed people of God, of every tribe, tongue, and nation. And that's what defines us, not the town that we grew up in. And so that's where the church needs to lead. The way that tribalism will die in York is by the church leading in being a welcoming people that seek out and talk to and welcome and include those that our community won't. So that would be one thing. And then the other thing, like, just to follow up on your lunch thing, man, like, just commit to maybe, if you're not comfortable with it, once a month, whatever, pick a Sunday. And that's going to be the Sunday that your family invites somebody out to the lunch that you don't know. That can make a huge impact in the long run. It's 10,000 small little things, you know? So, like, what is one Sunday that you're willing to give up every month for lunch where you're going to say, hey, and don't underestimate how this can impact your kids and what you're teaching your kids and modeling for your kids, and how this can change the culture of the church through your children in the future. So I would think just tiny little baby steps like that, and then just expect God's faithfulness. Expect Him to bless that.
I would say, if you're not used to doing this, don't just go bashing through the doors for somebody brand new and go up and, like, there's this hovering, overbearing attitude and aura about
especially if you're not good at it, because you're just sort of hanging out behind them, like looking at their earlobe and like, I want to talk to you, but I'm afraid to.
Maybe it's somebody new. Maybe the first week go up for those 5 minutes and say hello.
Yeah.
And then the second week, maybe, hey, I don't know what you guys have plans this week, but maybe how about next Sunday? Would you, if you guys are going to come back,
give them a buffer.
Yeah. Give them some time, and then give yourself some time too, to get used to what that feeling is going to be like, and those barriers that you're going to have to overcome.
That's really good.
Like, don't look at this as like something you have to check off and you have to do, and you have to do it a certain way, and you're going to be real rigid about it. Like, underneath the reason why we do this is because we love the people that God loves, and
we've been accepted by God as outsiders.
So, and we want to show that to one another. So that's what's going to drive what you do. That's going to change the way you probably would normally do things.
Exactly.
So that needs to be a part of.
Let that change be incremental.
Yeah. That needs to be a part of how we're processing this and how we go about executing it. So
that's good, man.
So don't be a hammer in a china shop going and bashing all.
And don't be a weirdo too. If, like, you're weird, just plan it out, man.
Yeah.
Just plan it out. Don't, like, walk up to somebody and just stand there and look at their nose or something like that for 5 seconds while they're talking to somebody else, and then turn around and walk away. That's just weird. Don't do that. Just don't be weird. Like, just be normal. Like, I mean, well, if that's normal for you, then maybe don't be normal, but
at least not until they get to know you. And then
exactly. Like, and if you got somebody, like, to your point, like, if you've got somebody that you're looking to go talk to, and they're having a conversation with somebody else, and there's not a good spot to go talk to them, just re-engage next week.
Yep.
It's all good. So anyway, that's good. That's a really good suggestion. I appreciate that. So, all right.
Well, hopefully that was helpful.
Now that everybody is going to be loving and hospitable next Sunday, including us.
Yeah. Hey, that's the other thing about this is, like, people think like we're giving advice as if
no, we're preaching to ourselves.
Like, I really struggle with this.
I do too.
It's one of the hardest, I think, of one of those qualifiers, especially for elders, like being hospitable. That's one that I have to work at really, 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 really hard.
Real quick side note, just so you know, hospitality does not involve having people over for dinner necessarily biblically. Right. It just involves welcoming the outsider.
Yeah.
And to that point, that can be awkward.
Yeah.
And it can be hard.
Yeah.
So, just go forth and do in the power and strength that the Lord provides.
I'm that guy that stands off to the side and, like, when are they going to stop talking? Not like that. But.
Like hyperventilating to yourself. I'm going to talk to somebody.
That's what I feel like inside. I think I handled it better on the outside.
I think so too. Thank goodness. That would be a barrier to ministry.
All right. So we'll talk about communion next week. So we're going to talk about this meal that we're going to have, and the mode of communion. Again, we have talked about that a little bit before. So hopefully you will join us for that episode. So we'll be back next week. So come back for the next episode of the Pastor Discussions Podcast, your weekly conversation on doctrine, faith, and the Christian life.